Hello and welcome to today's video. This time we'll be looking at the second half of my vintage Star Trek collection. We've got a few more books from the classic series, the run of Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and a little bit of Enterprise, as well as a few other interesting bits and bobs along the way. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. So today's video is dedicated to a good friend of mine who recently passed away, John Parker. John I knew since the late 80s, and he was always a great friend, very, very cheerful, and to be honest, the best and greatest Star Trek fan I ever did know. He was always such a welcoming chap, and I think I last met him at the Destination Star Trek convention at the NEC in Birmingham, which was just prior to the 2019 COVID lockdowns, and yeah, very, very sadly missed. So John, this video is dedicated to you, mate. Okay then, so starting off where we left off last time, so there were a couple of paperbacks that actually got missed out. Blame quality control, but these ones here were actually kept with my comic book related paperbacks, but of course they are classic Star Trek. So you got this one here. These are published by Marvel Illustrated books, and this one's here by Pocket Books, and these are comic strips. So this was the comic strip adaptation for the motion picture, which Marvel Comics released as a 3-part like mini series in comic book form, and it was a bit of a trend back then to put comic strips into paperback form, and the Star Wars ones were massive sellers for the 3 Star Wars movies, so it wasn't a surprise that they did it for this. And this is quite nice because it has got a few bits of trivia and facts at the back of the book, which makes it worth picking up alone, really. But the actual adaptation of the motion picture is pretty good. It really is. It's not as classic as, say, the Star Wars one, but it's still very, very good. And also, probably to cash in on the Star Trek craze around the motion picture, because you see they're in motion picture uniforms here, is some more comics. So after the initial run, the actual original Marvel comic for Star Trek went for 18 issues, 17 or 18 issues, and this is just a couple of issues of that shrunk down into, once again, into paperback form. But I didn't want to not include these because they are, and they should be, part of your Star Trek the Original Series book collection. Now, the other thing I didn't have a chance to show last time round were my collection of Star Trek annuals. Now, these are much larger format, and these were very much a British publication rather than American, and these basically reprinted the Gold Key comics from the States, and each annual reprinted about 3 of those Gold Key comics pretty much in order. So if you can't afford the original Gold Key comics, this is the way to get them. And they are just straight reprints. Some of them have, typical of British annuals, they've got like puzzles and colouring in pages and dots and crosswords, the typical sort of thing that you would see. This was the very first one. They've all got brand new cover art, and that is very much, it's a bit of a mixture, really. Some of it's quite good. Other bits you think, well, have they ever seen an episode of Star Trek? This is the second one here, and we'll just go through them. So that was the second one as the annual. This was not an annual, but it was a television storybook. So the idea was that with the annuals, these would generally be on sale sort of September, October through to early January as a Christmas present. The idea of a television storybook was that it could be sold all the year round. So that was the point of that. Then we got the 72 annual. And by this time, of course, Star Trek was regularly being seen on BBC TV. So it's got that little flash there. The 73, and a slightly questionable cover for the 74 annual. There's the 75. So that just used a picture, which wasn't a bad idea. And then the 76, I'll move them over there. This was the first one I remember getting given as a child, and I got to admit, I read it to death. I loved Star Trek. I absolutely loved it from the moment it hit the British Airways, really. And yeah, I was really, really pleased to get that one. Like all the 77 annuals, Doctor Who, Bionic Man, Star Trek, they were all oversized. Space 1999. So this one's much, much larger than a regular British annual. It was just for that one odd year, which is a bit of an unusual anomaly in the run. And then we got the 78, 79. I think we had 80 or 81 because we had, by then we had the one for the motion picture. Then I think we had that one there. Then we had one for Wrath of Khan. Then finally this one, which came quite late, 1986, just prior to Next Generation launching, which is slightly unusual. Next Gen itself actually has a separate annual for 1991, which I don't know, I may or may not have it here, so there you go, but there is one for Next Generation as well. Okay, so just the tail end of my sort of larger format Star Trek books. So this one was Inside Star Trek, The Real Story. You might recognize the name, Herbert F. Solow and Robert H. Justman. This is fantastic. This is a really good book. In fact, this book was so good, although it's quite visual, they actually released an audiobook of it, if you can believe it. So there's not many Star Trek non-fiction audiobooks except the autobiographies, which I recommend. But this was this was released in audiobook. It's really, really good. So I thoroughly recommend tracking down a copy of that one. It's a real cracker. This one I use a lot. So this is basically the best book that's ever been written on the Star Trek fiction paperbacks, and they really do make an effort to track down the surviving authors and their thoughts and the editors and things like that. It's an absolute brilliant resource, and I just wish this one had come out in hardback because it's such a great book, you know. So if you can track one of those down, I got mine off eBay. It wasn't expensive, it was about maybe a tenner, something like that, but it was well worth that. A pop-up book. This one was for the Star Trek the Motion Picture. Yeah, typical pop-up book. It's not bad. It's not the best one I've ever had, but it's not bad. There we are. Some of the pop-ups a little bit dicey, so I'm going to tread carefully. But you get, that was that horrific scene, wasn't it? In the transporter room. But yeah, it's not bad, it's a bit of fun. Once again, there's quite a few books produced for the motion picture. It really was quite the phenomenon, and I think we forget that sometimes. Here's just a little hardback storybook, a Random House one. Once again, these could be sold all year round, unlike an annual, which was quite, you know, seasonal, as they say, but quite good. Sort of for young adult market, I suppose. This one's slightly more ancient. It's the Star Trek Starfleet technical manual. There's a few of these back then. This one was published by Ballantine, who, if you remember, were published in lots of fiction books at the time. And these are very popular. And the first prints are actually quite difficult to get because they are like 50 plus years old now. And I think this one's got a little insert which came with it. Yeah. So that's quite nice, that one, with the plastic rubbery jacket to it. This is another absolutely key book, the Star Trek Concordance. So if you get this one, you can get the reprint, but the original one had this revolving stardate map, as you can see. You turn it around and it changes the stardate there, which is really cool, and it also tells you which page in the book it's referenced. So this is once again by Ballantine, B. Joe Trimble, absolute legend in the world of Star Trek. And this was the first sort of attempt, really, at a proper Star Trek encyclopedia. However, they called it the Concordance, Star Trek Concordance. Very good. I mean, groundbreaking in its day, in actual fact. So that was the first printing of that particular one, published by Ballantine. A couple others here. This is one that I always enjoyed. It was one called A Star Trek Catalogue. So I don't think this was ever like officially approved because... well, I don't know. I just don't know a lot about this one. It's got like photos, some official photos, but some from conventions and things like that. It's a bit of an unusual one. You know, these like behind the scenes shots and that. So I'm not sure exactly how official this was. But definitely interesting all the same from that sort of mid-1970s period when Star Trek was really getting popular. But they hadn't quite come back with the first film yet, which is what we were all sort of waiting for back then. This is a Corgi. This is the Corgi edition, but there is an American one, the Star Trek Puzzle Manual. Don't see this one around very often, but this is the British version of it, and it's crossword puzzles and quizzes and stuff like that. Pretty scarce, this one, and this is actually unused, as you can see. 1976. But it says there it was published by Bantam, but all that's happened is for this UK one, it's got a UK cover popped on it, which is Corgi, but you can get the Bantam edition, and it's scarce. It is scarce. Alongside this one, another scarce puzzle book, the Star Trek Intergalactic Puzzles. This one is also by Bantam. Very similar to the last one, but it is different. and it's got a really distinctive silver cover here. So it's another one that you might want to keep your eyes peeled for. Then we got this one. I don't think I've ever seen another copy of the one that we've got here. Star Trek the Motion Picture, Make Your Own Costume. But this is definitely a book that does not turn up very often, and I really struggled to find a copy, but I knew it existed. Well, eventually one came along, which was really good. Obviously, all Star Trek the Motion Picture related. Here's another sort of activity book. It's Make a Game book. Star Trek Make a Game book. Got a big playboard there inside. There we are. This one's been unused, of course. Lots of punch outs and stuff. Once again, this is Wanderer, which is pocket books, is like junior imprint. If you ever come across that in half decent condition, you want to grab it because that's rare. And then we got 2 more pop-up books to finish off the larger format Star Trek books, and I think that's all my Trek original related books. These are published by Random House, Trillions of Trilligs, and these are great, absolutely great little pop-up books. There's never a lot to them. I mean, just a handful of pages, but they're not bad, are they? They are not bad at all. So that's one of them. And the other one, which I think this is the more common one, is A Giant in the Universe. Let's have a quick look through that one. Same format, same publisher. Bit of a Land of the Giants vibe going on here. But there we are, once again, capitalising on the popularity of Star Trek in the 1970s. So there we go. So that rounds out all my classic Star Trek books. We're now going to start on the pocket Star Trek The Next Generation run. Okay then, well, where does it all begin? Well, Encounter at Farpoint, which was the Next Generation pilot. I'm sure we've all seen this one now. This is quite interesting. It's got an Odyssey 7 sticker on the back, because originally this did not have a British printing. It was all the copies in the UK were imported into the specialist shops. So this first print here, October 87, amazing to think how long ago that actually was now. Almost 40 years since Next Generation started. I remember the excitement like you wouldn't believe. I thought, what, new Star Trek at last? It was just amazing. And then being like, oh, I don't know what to make of this. You know, I mean, it was great. I loved it. But at the same time, I thought, this is going to take a bit of getting used to, you know. And, well, I suppose the rest is history. It certainly got off to a great start. I noticed, you know, they called on that first season, they record on a lot of the classic, you know, writers and behind the scenes people to really get it off to a good start, including the book being written by David Gerald, who of course wrote The Trouble with Tribbles. Right, and then we're into the numbered series, so which is a Ghost Ship. Now, I have covered some of these in separate sort of Star Trek videos, so I'm not going to go into them all in detail, plots or whatever. It's just really to have a look through what I've actually got in my collection, which for Next Generation onwards is definitely not complete. It's not bad, but I am missing some books, so the hunt always is never ending, isn't it? The quest continues, as they say, but we'll zoom through them. So that was book 1 and book 2. Children of Hanem. Really fantastic cover art on a lot of these books. They really are. And I think by this time the Star Trek the original series was well established, so they would start to release books side by side. You get a classic Trek book and a next gen book, first of all alternate months, and then you get one of each every single month, which started to get really tricky to keep up on. But 2 books a month was not too much of a problem, but it soon, well, as you know, soon got much harder, and I would say out of hand. You could say they were really milking it at one point, but you know, ultimately they were in it to make the money, and there was a ready audience. There was just not enough Star Trek to go around. It really was riding high. Obviously season 2 now with Dr. Pulaski. In a hard place, and Peter David, I mean, yeah, well-known names within the world of Star Trek, and they would call on all the names because I think they just had such a massive demand. They could pretty much, you know, put out whatever was given to them, and I think that's why later on in the run, as I'm sure you're aware, they started doing series, and it was like you didn't get a whole book in one, a standalone. Everything was like trilogies or, you know, duologies or quadrologies. It was just mind-numbingly annoying. Crossing different series as well. It just drove people around the twist, and I think it spelt the end when they started doing that. I really do believe that. Certainly it turned me off the books. But these early ones had a really great artwork on them. This is when books could still be enjoyed for what they were, and they were. It was a thrill to get the new Star Trek book and read it. It really, really was. And a lot of these I stocked brand new in my store back in the 90s as they were being published. We had an account with Pocket Books, and we sold them all. And there wasn't just these, of course. As I said, there was Next Gen. We start to get DS9 later on, which we'll see. And then there was large format books, and all the calendars would come from Pocket as well. It was a never-ending stream of merchandise. Never-ending. 20, Spartacus. Chains of Command. But you've got to admit, they are really nice looking books, aren't they? They really are eminently collectible these days. They're all numbered, which is like, for me, it's like a ball to a rag. I can't help it when they start sticking a number on it, but I was not alone. And the thing is, there's just not that many, and it's so easy nowadays to pick up job lot runs of these books that you don't need to spend a fortune to get them all. You really, really don't. There's a few scarcer ones, which we'll see later on, but really, most of these are very, very cheap, and they can be enjoyed, super cheaply, and you can put a collection together, which is great fun. It really is good fun to collect these. And I notice John Peel, who's still an avid TV tie-in collector today, John Peel, what they would do, a bit like the classic Trek, where there was that massive focus on Mr. Spock seemingly being the most popular character. I think in Next Generation it ended up being Mr. Data. He seemed to get the lion's share of it, at least in my opinion. But all characters got sort of like dedicated novels to them. They really did. And often, if it was like a Riker Troy specific one, those two actors would end up Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis would end up doing the audiobook of it, because they were featured in doing the other characters' voices. And I said, a lot of these, maybe not these later ones, but all those early ones and loads of classic Star Trek ones had audiobook adaptations, which are really, really good. There is a lot of them. There must be at least 100. So I would track those down. They're readily available online if you can't find them. The best were released on CD. And but most of them, when they first came out, they were on cassette tape in like little books that you'd fold up with 2 tapes in, and that's how I used to listen to them when I was going around delivering for my dad back in the day. I used to do a fruit and veg run for him, and in the van I'd play Star Trek audiobooks and loved it. Online Stratagem. See, these are really nice books, aren't they? They really are excellent. But sadly, I think the quality just over the years has just declined and declined. And now it's not what it once was. There's a lot of new Trek being made, of course, and there are new books being published. Occasionally, not loads, but there's some. But it's never, ever. I don't think it'll ever hit the heyday of what it was in the 80s and 90s. That was really, really something in the early 2000s. There was a lot of books coming out. I mean, just incredible amounts. Now, this is the first example we've got within Next Generation of one of those 4-parters which went through the different series. And to read that story, if you wanted the run, if you wanted all the numbered run, you had to buy this. But you may not be interested in DS9, but you had to buy that book to get the story. Eventually, of course, they'd release an omnibus edition with all 4 books in one. And you think, well, why didn't they just do that to begin with? Why did they milk it and make the punter back then spend probably a best part of a £5 for the book, 20 quid for the book, over 4 parts when they could have stuck it in one. Just a bit annoying. But there you go. 42. Death of a Princess. Death of Princes, I should say. Televore. Diane Duane. Well, some of these authors, of course, ended up coming back and writing many, many Star Trek books, and there's some really great books within the series. This was another one which was one of three, and it was all Q based, and these were consecutive numbers, so at least it was all within the Next Generation series. But even so, look, 3 books, all by Greg Cox. Why didn't they just put those in one big thick one? Why did they have to milk it and get £15 out of somebody? That's I think honestly it really cost them, in my opinion. They lost reputation a little bit with their fans, and it just started putting people off. But there we are, book number 50, Dyson Spear. And then Double Helix, look, book 1 of 6. I mean, it's not a comic book series, I don't know. I suppose it was a way to use older characters in the book series, and some of the other ones there. We've got some Deep Space Nine and Voyager crew there. Book 5, and look at that, book 6. So, I mean, really, yeah, they look nice. They're a nice little set, but at the same time, I just don't think it. I don't think it was necessary. But there you go. It wasn't the last time they did such a thing, so they must have sold all right, Gem World, another nice Data one. Book 1 and book 2. Not sure. Some of the covers I thought linked actually, so I might look out for that later on. Tooth and Claw. Yeah, I think it was around this sort of time that I started to lose a little bit of interest in these. Maximum Warp books 1 and book 2. And at this point, I think chronologically, the Next Gen finale had been broadcast, and that also had its own book, All Good Things, which I'm sure you remember. An absolutely fantastic way to round out the series. I really loved that. So that even had a hardback before it was paperback, I remember. Then these are some of the standalone ones. Battle of Beta Z. Best and the Brightest. Crossover, that was another slightly earlier one, which is all the people who came back. So you had McCoy, Scotty and Spock. All the people who'd managed to come back onto Next Gen in like little guest roles. They were back in that particular book. And we got Dark Mirror. The evil Picard there. And Ancient Blood, book 1 of 4. That was another one of those crossover series. It was a Klingon based one. Then we got Descent, which was another one based on the actual 2-part story. That was with Lore, wasn't it? And the Borg. Devil's Heart. And Do Comet Streams. This is I've just put these into alphabetical order, but this is a slightly later one, and this has got a completely sort of new look to the series. I think it's really they're really nice. Look at that one with the logo at the bottom there. That was just a real departure. I think it really works. That, yeah. Rather than it being a numbered one, it was just like a standalone, and that was the sort of book that we were looking for, Dominion War. This is the books 3 and 4 of Dominion War. I think we had 1 and 2 in the last video. A few more standalones to come. Hard Rain, that was obviously the holodeck-based episodes, wasn't it? With Picard in a noir episode. Film noir. That was a good one. Great use of the covers. What a great jacket that is. Really good. The old Leonardo Data there with the control panel in the back. Awesome. That's really good. That's actually quite good to look at, because this is what they were like. This was a UK import sticker. So shops like mine at Purple Haze, we would buy them from the wholesalers, and Pocket weren't printing local editions after Titan stopped publishing them, so they would just put a UK sticker with barcode over the American price. So but it is the original American edition. We got Umzadi, very popular, of course. This, another very popular one, this. Klingon. Yeah, the novelization of the hit CD-ROM. Who remembers CD-ROMs, Michael O'Reilly, wasn't it? I believe. Then the first giant Star Trek novel. So this actually was about Star Trek novel number 12, Next Gen novel number 12. And if you remember last video, we saw quite a few original Star Trek giant novels. They were all the rage, and it was only right that Next Gen was going to get some, and there we are. That's what it was. And they sort of quite funky with the raised silver logo there. Q squared also would be considered a giant. Relics, that was the one when Scotty came back, wasn't it? Nice little episode, that one. And Reunion. And then Ship of the Line, another great one. Unification, the Spock return episode. Vendetta, another giant one, Guinan based. And then the last one I've got is, well, you couldn't make it up, could you? Star Trek X-Men, Planet X. I mean, how is that even possible? I mean, Michael Jan Friedman had written X-Men comics and books before, and he'd written Star Trek, so I guess he knew the two franchise really well. But even so, what were they thinking? I mean, really, I haven't dared even dream to read it, but it's super collectible. So if you ever come across it in any printing, because it was reprinted about 6 times, so in any printing, pick that one up because it's a real rarity. Anyway, that is, I think, most of my Next Generation books. We shall now move on to Deep Space Nine. Okay, so cracking on with Deep Space Nine, and once again, the series kicks off. It's numbered, but it's also with Emissary, which was the Deep Space Nine pilot. And I haven't quite got all of these, but I've got a few. I've got most of them. The Siege. And they do follow the very, very familiar sort of pattern that these books have all been doing, which is some episodes focus on particular characters, other ones are multi-part. A big game. Got quite a soft spot for Deep Space Nine. It certainly had its moments, didn't it? And I really did enjoy the last couple of seasons when they got off the station a little bit more. They were excellent. But I think Deep Space Nine, more than Next Generation, was really, really character-led. And if you like the characters, you couldn't really go wrong, could you? There's number 6 and 7. I think these were all, these are imports by Pocket and then sold in the UK, but they're the American editions. It's number 8 there. I definitely haven't got them all. It's number 9, but it's nice to have some to be on the lookout for, so I have always got my list on me. If I come across any of these out in the wild, I generally pick them up if it's ones I haven't got. So it's number 12. That's up, jumping number to 15. This is another one. That was that Invasion crossover, if you remember. This is book 3 of 4 in the Invasion series. Book 18, Saratoga. I got 2 copies of this one. I believe one of them might be signed. I did get a nice batch of ones I was missing. Here we are. This says to John, keep on trekking, Michael Jan Friedman. My friend Chris and his daughter Juliet have been helping me fill in the gaps on some of my Star Trek series, and Chris sent at least 2 box loads of books over from the States for me. So thanks once again for helping me out on this journey, Chris. It's much appreciated. Wrath of the Prophets there, book 20. Then a bit of a jump to book 27, but it's the most collectible Star Trek book of all. It's never been reprinted, although I believe you can get it as an ebook now. It's by Andrew J. Robinson, Andy Robinson, who played Garak in the show, and it's much, much bigger than a regular one. And I don't really know if Andrew Robinson actually wrote any more books, but this one's certainly, really, really well regarded. Certainly, I've read it. I've read a couple of times, and it's actually really good. This one was flat signed, so it was in the UK. There used to be a chain of books called Ottakers. This has got an Ottakers sticker on. I don't know how they managed to get some signed ones, but there it is. I did actually get to meet Andrew Robinson once, and he was really, really good. And I said, I'm more a fan of you from the Dirty Harry movie, which I think is the first Dirty Harry movie, which I think is an absolute classic. But he laughed at that. He said, not many people remember that. So, well, there we go. But yeah, so that's that. And I said it just had the one print, May 2000. So it is 24 years old now. Try and find a really nice one is tough. But this was no harder to get at the time, because we sold this when it was brand new in my shop. This was no harder to get at the time than any of the other Star Trek books. So why it's really collectible nowadays, I don't know. But I have seen copies sell for over £100, and I don't think I've ever seen a signed one come up for sale, not with like a shop signature sticker on. So always look out for A Stitch in Time. Then we got Dominion War, another odd part of that, part 2 of 4. Day of Honor, another one of those, book 2 of 4 of that. And we got Star Trek Starfleet Academy, which was based on the CD-ROM. So once again, based on a computer game, the Starfleet Academy. Another odd one here, Star Trek Typhoon Pack. Now this one is also signed. It was Nicole. It's the lady who played Dax there. What was she called? Nicole something or other. I've got her written down, but this one's signed on the cover by her. I got a couple like that. And then we move on to the final little run, which is Voyager. So, keeping up the tradition, they start off with the pilot, which is Caretaker. A pretty good pilot, as I recall, Caretaker. And I was a big fan of Voyager, I've got to say. I did prefer it to Deep Space Nine. And I think it wrapped up really, really well. I'm glad to see, just announced this week, old Robert Picardo, the Doctor, is going to be back in a new Star Trek series as a regular. So that's supremely cool, that. And then we got, so if that was book 1, this is Voyager 2. Got the little number in the middle there. The Escape. 3, Ragnarok. Violations. An Incident at Arbuk. That's 1 to 5. Murdered Son. Ghost of a Chance. Cyber Song. And this is part 4 of Invasion, so we've seen all 4 parts of that in this video. And that was Voyager book 10. This is book 11, The Garden. Chrysalis. And they keep a fairly consistent artwork style, don't they? They're not perhaps quite as sharp as the earlier ones, but still very, very good. And 7 and 9. I remember when this one came out, this was a huge seller. Absolutely massive. That was a very great stroke of genius by adding 7 of 9 to Voyager. I don't think they did. That hurt the show in one little bit, that. Death of a Neutron Star. And Battle Lines. And the last few is we got Dark Matters book 1, another trilogy, book 2, and finally book 3. That's all my Voyager books. And then I've got a very early Enterprise book, Serac Soul, which is my last one by J.M. Dillard. So there you go. That is my entire Star Trek book collection, such as it stands today. Pretty much. There may be 1 or 2 odd ones that I've got overlooked, but on the whole, that's it. So I've got a bit of scope still to collect more, the missing DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise ones, plus the more recent books, should I wish to sort of go down that alley. There's new authors writing for them now, and there's an awful lot still to catch up on. But this sort of classic period around 2000, 2003, 4, it's sort of my cut-off point, which was, let's be honest, still amazingly 20 years ago. So I thought, just for fun, you might enjoy having one last look, spine on at this wall of Star Trek books that I've got in front of me here. Absolutely fantastic. I do love these. As you can see, they do make a very colourful bookshelf if you are thinking of collecting these. As I said, they do represent great value for money, with a couple of exceptions, a couple of dear books. On the whole, you're not going to have to spend a fortune, but you could get a very, very great collection indeed. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that sort of follow-up to my classic Trek video from a few weeks back. Certainly it's been really great fun getting them all out again and having another look. If you have enjoyed this video, do please give it that thumbs up. Do please hit the subscribe button for regular vintage paperback content, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.